Okay, so we are live. Hey guys, welcome back to another event of Design Sundays and Design Jungle. We are so happy to see you all here. It's now become like a weekend ritual or something. But now like we are super happy, and if you're here for the first time, do check out the playlist, the product series on the same channel if you want. And there we have three episodes already. First, we have Udit Gupta, ex Zomato, and now he is in YC forming his company. Then, second, we have the director of product at OLX, Jasjeet. He's talking about how to transition from a UX design role to a product management role. It's super fun. And just last weekend, we had Gagan Sani from director of user experience PayU. He was talking about how he has this framework of seeing the design process as a wedding, and he explained really well how you can go throughout the journey. And this is super amazing, and I'm so happy to see you all in the journey. Like it's amazing, literally amazing. I've literally seen the views and everything, and you guys are sticking around. Like even if we invite you at 4 p.m. or 6 p.m., 8 p.m. or 11 a.m. So thank you so much. And I want to just give you a quick, intro about the topic we are going to discuss today, and also about the speaker, the guest, and the host. So, just to start with, this series we started to give you guys the access to the skills that is required to go one level above in the empathy with your team, and to boost your career, right? And in that series we are bringing the best people from product management, product heads, product leaders, and designers, obviously, to give you guys the secret these guys are using to make a mark for themselves. They have used to make a mark for themselves, and they're doing seriously really good. Okay, so today we have a session on data informed design. So most people say it's data driven design, but we do not believe in data driven design a lot. We believe in data informed design. This is something we will discuss in the session as well. What's the difference between data driven design and data informed design? And today we have with us Swapnil, who is a product designer at CleverTap. Before that, he has worked with companies like uh, Book My Show, and led some amazing products there. He did a thesis project on data driven design as well. We will talk more about that in the session. And the host for this session, the host for this session is Jagriti Pandey. As you guys already know from the previous stream, she is the co-founder and co-founder of Design Jungle as well as UX Gorilla. So we'll be talking to them. And just to get started, this series is hosted by Design Sundays and Design Jungle. And you guys can put your comments in the live chat. We'll be taking that up. I'm so happy to see you here, and let's invite our guests now. Guys, are you ready? I'm going to put you on. Okay, awesome. Yeah, welcome, Swapnil. Hello, ma'am.
Hey, what's up?
Uh, yeah,
Hi, Swapnil.
awesome. So
Hey, what's up?
I'll, I'll,
Thank you,
I'll,
guys. Yep.
uh, I'll leave you guys to
Go ahead.
it, and I'll be here. Okay. So,
Yep.
All right. How is
Awesome.
it going with you, Swapnil? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. The lockdown is clearly getting to me, but it's actually
It's
good.
just
Yeah.
small talk. We just discussed it backstage. I thought, why not do it
Yeah. Yeah.
immediately just
Yeah.
now. But
Yep.
anyway, nice to actually have you back with us again. This is something
I
that
think
we did
last. I
last
think
year.
it was 2019. I don't know. June
It was
itself.
no, it was the beginning of 2019, and it was
Oh
quite a
damn.
good session. We kind of managed between broken internet issues and everything else.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that's not the case right now.
Yeah. Because now
Yeah,
you actually have to invest in a good setup and stuff like that.
right.
Yeah.
So, Swapnil, yes. So I think today's topic is data informed design, and I've
Yep.
actually I've seen your journey, like through all these years, and you've done some amazing work. Like you were the Google design expert, like
Yeah,
Google, like when that actually used to be there. Now there are no experts anymore.
yeah.
But you
They
last
graduated a program. Yeah,
yes. So and you also mentor a lot of startups. So just to
yeah,
set up the context, I want to understand from you that as a designer, and you also have a tech background, right? How do you like? Why do you think that it's a good idea to have data informed design, and like what is the context? Why do you think it's important for designers to learn about data? So if you can just set up a context, and I know you're going to also present a paper for us, which is
yeah,
amazing. So
yeah.
yeah, let's start with that, and then maybe you can you can get started with your paper.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me again, and it's been great to actually talk to you guys and inform the larger design community on the facts that we actually go through and solve better problems. Because I don't think there's a forum that actually makes it so candid to do it, and it's always good to have new people learn a lot of stuff, because the only thing that stays constant that is you keep learning and keep growing, right? So in that sense, let me get to the data point on why data is important. So I've worked with a few companies, and largely when you think of working at a startup versus a big company, uh, the thing that matters the most, at least for the product's growth, is data. Because as a designer, you can be making rainbows, you can be painting blue skies and all of that, you can be actually tweaking your UI, you can be experimenting with colors, all of that. But at the end of the day, how does that matter, or how what impact does it show? That comes down to the actual data. And unless you have data to prove it, uh, in a company that actually cares about data, and actually wants to make a true impact and help steer the business in the right direction, unless you actually have data to prove it, it's very difficult to understand what is happening, right? So it's very important in that sense to have supporting data to be able to make strategic decisions. Because let's say you grow as a designer, tomorrow you go ahead to head design in a company or a startup. And so how are you going to prove to your stakeholders that a design decision you will be making is actually going to implement a better sense of business strategy, or is it going to impact the business in a positive way versus the negative way, right? So that's where data comes in. So if you think of it, let's take an example, right? You want to actually help a user from point A to point B in a payment journey, right? So let's say you're booking a movie ticket, and you want to actually get the user to book a movie ticket from point A to point B. Now, as a designer, you thought of making a button color from blue to green, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just by visual standards. But those visual standards don't really connect with the users. And how do you now understand if those visual standards are good or not? And
Yeah.
that's where data comes in, and that's where you can have something as powerful as A/B testing, where you can A/B test these two things. And I think a lot of companies do that. Even with, I mean, bigger companies even do that with your UX copy. They do it with small icons. They do it with stuff like if they're introducing a new feature, they A/B test it with few users, and only then they gather the data and understand what is happening. So all of these things are very important in order to drive the product into a direction where the company is heading. And without data, it's very difficult to do that. So that's where data comes in. And I think we can move on to the question of data informed versus data driven,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
because that is a very, I mean, it's often used interchangeably,
Yes.
but it's a term that is often used interchangeably, and people don't know really what is the difference, right? So when people say data driven and people say data obsessed, what does that actually mean? When you say data driven or data obsessed, it actually means that you care about data,
Hmm.
and there are not a lot of companies that do that right now. I mean, that requires a digital transformation to actually understand your data and accordingly design your product design decisions. But when you actually say data driven, it means that you understand data and accordingly use that data to steer the product direction. For
Hmm.
example, let's say you launched a new feature and you saw a poor adoption. So now
Right.
you will take that data and understand, okay, I need to make my adoption of the product better. But at the same time, you cannot drive all your product decisions based on data alone, because
Hmm.
you have certain business goals, your company has certain business goals, you have certain design goals, your product has certain goals to meet and launch new products. So this is where data informed comes in. Whereas, so the difference between data informed and data driven is, data informed is more on the lines of what you already have. So
Right.
let's say you want to actually, now where data informed comes in, you already have a goal and you use data to support that goal. Whereas in data driven, you don't have a goal and you just use data to understand where to go ahead.
Yeah.
So a data informed strategy would be, let's say you have, you want to limit, you want to see you want to limit the steps in your payment procedure.
Hmm.
You're buying let's say you're buying something from Flipkart, right? And you want to actually limit the procedure to go from point A to point B, that is from your product in card to checkout, right? So how do you do that? So there, I would say now you have a goal that you want to limit these things. So now you would start searching for that data to understand where are the funnel cliffs, right? So where are my users dropping? Where are my users actually getting stuck? Where are my users spending the most time? So now that you have a goal, you can be informed about the data it has in order to and steer the goal accordingly, right? And
Hmm.
then present your facts and data to your stakeholders or your founders or your let's say the CXOs to understand and let them know, okay, this is what's happening and this is the data I have to support it. Because unless you have all of this evidence, there's no one in the company that's going to say, oh, this does
Yeah.
not, I mean, why would I do this? Why would I remove one step and club it with another step? Is the
Right.
question that comes in, right? So accordingly, you need to fix that uh, thing and uh, understand if data driven works more for you. I think data driven is more for product leaders who want to know how the product is doing, which
Right.
parts of the product are better used and more engaging than your data informed, which is you already have something to do and you understand from that data on what you want to do. I hope that clears it up.
I think it also, like what you said, of course, makes sense. And if I have to add to that, I would say that, as designers, again, to quote that instinctive or the intuition, as
Yeah,
designers, sometimes we do have intuition of doing
yeah,
things
yeah,
like right. But if a company is extremely data driven and they only focus on data, there are a lot of other things which can actually be an enhancement to the product. But if we are only a data driven company and if we only do things that data point us to, in that scenario we lose
yeah,
out a lot of opportunities. But if we are a data informed company, maybe let's say I come up with a hypothesis that I think this thing is not working because of this. So
yeah,
can we now, validate this assumption or validate this hypothesis with certain experiments? So that's
yeah,
data info, where you are using data perhaps to sometimes even validate your hypotheses, but you're not
yeah.
completely driven by it. There's a very interesting book. It's Creative Selection. I think it's by a
Okay,
Apple designer,
okay,
and he talks about it. He says like the difference between Apple and Facebook. He has actually quoted these two companies. Is that on Facebook everything is data driven. So they like in their boardrooms typically. I don't know, like it's just the book in which he quotes it that in the boardroom meetings they're actually debating about which blue color to go with. Like they
yeah,
are
yeah,
that precise to the data. And
yeah,
in Apple, it's like we have a hunch of something, then we quickly build it, and then we collect as much data as we can to make sure that what we did was right or not. So they are taking a test approach, but they're okay to go with a hypothesis and then use data to inform it. So I think that's also interesting to see how companies do it. And
yeah.
yeah, that's quite fun. So
So
one
it can,
thing for
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead. Yeah.
sure, go ahead.
So it can also be about, let's say you want to make a design decision on a product. For example, you think that the scroll size of a page should be lesser than larger because you think that the only first fold of the page is visible to users, whereas people don't scroll. And that is a popular assumption that people make, right? it's a popular assumption that the first fold of the page on a mobile is the only page, even desktop for that matter, is the only thing that people see. The everything on the second or third fold is useless. So now if you want to propose that, or I mean, it's not a big proposal because I mean, sure, it's important, but there might be few cases where you want to do that, and just as a designer, you might just want to try it out and understand if that is the right way to go. So you can just use data and tools like Hotjar or something that you record with to understand if people are actually scrolling down. And if majority of them are scrolling down, I don't think you should have the problem. But just by assuming or reading Medium articles or reading opinions from other people that users don't scroll, I mean, that is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I mean, having assumptions and having these best practices is a good thing, but knowing your users better and understanding how your users are actually behaving, because you have instinctively developed these patterns in them, is where data comes in.
That's true. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned about those listicle articles, 10 things that everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is where data comes in, and it's a perfect way to actually test those assumptions. So Swapnil, one question before we head on to your your paper. I think you have a wonderful paper that you want to present us.
Yeah.
So I actually want to understand that many a times when I started talking about data informed design, I was a little late to the party, to be honest.
Yeah.
I thought that research is not like the job of UX designers. Though I've done research a lot in college, and then for some time I abandoned it because I used to think that not I used to think my experiences were like clients were not usually interested, or how do I pitch it to them. And when I was actually convinced and I started using it, then whenever I used to talk about it, the young designers used to feel that like how would someone listen to them, like how is it that it who would listen or who would back it up. We don't know numbers, we don't know data, who would do it for us, how should we get started. So these are like, I would say there is a lot of barrier to entry. I don't know if it's psychological or if it's real, but there is, because I also faced that. I also thought that how do I pitch somebody that let's do data informed. I thought that if I am if I have this much experience, then only somebody would listen to me. So I think that you have been very data informed from the beginning of your career. So I want to understand from you that how has been that journey for you? Like how easy was it for you? Who were the people who were your allies who helped you do this thing in the organizational structure?
So I think my journey started very well from college when I was introduced to the UI UX thing, and I was always fascinated and always learning on the sidelines to understand if how things work. So I had really good friends and mentors that way to help understand, and I used to attend a lot of these GDG talks when I was not an organizer itself, to attend these talks and understand what is happening. So there were a lot of insights that they shared on stage, like Flipkart's. I mean, I don't know if it's changed now, but a new Flipkart version back in I think 2017, a new Flipkart version used to take 3 months for a user to actually, for all of the user base to get it, all or 90% of the user base. So all of these data points actually help you understand on what your business might be doing, and this is where it all comes in, right? But at the same time, I have worked and also worked with companies where all of these data points actually are difficult to actually incorporate, because it needs to be a culture, right? It cannot just be that, okay, today I feel like using data driven design, or I feel like being data informed. That's why my manager, or let's say my colleagues, might be also informed about that, right? So it's a more of a learning thing. It's a mindset change. So I think the most important thing in a company is, or the most difficult thing to do in a company, is to change the mindset of other people. Whereas pitching is still okay, because you can obviously, you just need to be a great salesman to pitch in, right? But at the same time, if you can actually prove the company that using data is good for us, and
Yeah.
using or seeing data is good for us, then it becomes more of a sensible approach rather than just doing it yourself. Because you can always do it yourself and say, oh, I tested this with 3 or 4 friends and they said it's good, so that's why I think it should be the right thing, which is not going to work, right? I mean, if your company is not data informed or not data obsessed with that matter, then they're just going to be like, you tested it with friends, so I mean, sure, it might be right, but mature companies know that this is not the right approach to follow. Mature companies are aware that if things there are things on data that you need to actually do. How do you navigate through it, or how do you actually understand where to go? So that's where it comes in, right? And I think that's the crux of it, is that overall in my journey, I have been with a lot of startup leaders and people who have worked in amazing technology companies, and they know how to do A/B testing, and they know how to understand these data points. And I think most of these learning comes from these early stage startups, because they need such people, right? Whereas
Right.
bigger companies are more specialized. They would be like, I'm an illustrator, or I'm a graphic designer, I'm a product designer, I'm a UI UX designer, I'm only doing UX, I'm only doing UI. Whereas when you're an early stage startup, you have to do everything and also understand how it impacts the business, because that is how the startup survives, right? So that's where I think the data driven and data informed uh, positioning comes in. 1 second, I'll just make sure this halo doesn't blind everyone. But yeah, I think that's where all of this data informed decision come in.
Okay. So this would be okay. So inside, let's say we actually manage to inspire some UX UI designer, and they go back and they say that we want to do this. Who should be the person? Like, what should be the next step? Who should be the person they should be talking to? That let me just talk to this person, and probably this person would be interested and they would back me up. So who do you think would be that person in an organization that you should talk to about this thing?
I think so. As a, I mean, this can be different from. I mean, there's no one size fits all, but it depends actually, because if you think of it, uh, you need to have that power in an organization to do it. So if you are, let's say, a junior or a senior designer, and you have a lot of hierarchy in the organization, then it's very difficult to pitch something to others, because
Mhm.
everyone has their own opinions. There are different personalities across the organization. So
Right.
it is difficult to actually do that. But the larger context of things is that you need to essentially build that culture, or try to communicate multiple times, let them read articles, show them what other people have done, show them how it is going through, right? All of these things contribute more towards that, rather than just having, a set structure to go about it. So
Right.
I think it comes down to mostly having a political power, or a leader that can actually inculcate these. Because again, if you're terming organization, it's a big company. It has a lot of perspectives. So just talking to your manager, or just talking to the head of design isn't going to make it happen, because even they don't have the uh, political power, or the political capital to actually drive it. Because in the end, it comes down to what your actual CXOs or founders want, right? I mean, and what the business wants. So you can always say that, and I think it's a good thing, because as a company grows. But I think as a designer, what you could do is ask, or start asking about to product managers about data. Instead of
Right.
inculcating the culture, start one by one, like start
Yeah.
step by step. So ask your product manager, hey, do you have any data to support this? Hey, do you have any data to actually make me understand if this is the right way to go? Do you have any data to understand, hey, why are we making this change? I think all of these questions on, I don't think enough designers ask why, on why they design stuff. And I think they mostly just want to fantasize on the visuals and all of those things, and the design system and all of those uh, visually appealing things. I think more on the lines of actually understanding what is right and why are we doing this. And this
Right.
goes for everything, right? If you understand the why behind your decisions, even company decisions for that matter, it also makes you grow. It's not like you are just a, what is that, what is
Cog.
it called, cog in the machine. Yeah, cog in the machine, and you just do it. But it's good to always understand your reasonings behind doing things.
That's true. I think
I hope that
maybe
answers your question.
yeah, that does actually. So I think one thing that I personally like my takeaway is also is that if this organization probably is not like on the UX maturity scale, maybe this organization is a little like low, or maybe they don't understand data informed design that much. But at least if you're asking questions, somebody might get curious, or at least you are in the radar. So when they are willing to like go next level, they would know who would be the person to bring on board and do it. Or maybe at least if you have informed your designs enough, maybe if you present your own, you are making your own case studies, you are building your own assets, so when you're going to a next organization, you can still talk about what you did, and
Yeah,
maybe that
yeah.
organization, by choice, could be a company which is very invested in data, and they do take cognizance of what users are saying, what data is saying, and then bringing in something which is aligned.
I think on a seniorship. Sorry to cut you off.
No, no,
But I
no.
think on a seniorship level, yeah, if you move from one organization to other, the other organization might be much more elevated to actually understand what choices you made at the last one. Because let's say you move from a bigger company, like let's take an example of Airbnb to, let's say you took a step to another travel company, or a travel company, or another housing type of stuff, right? So that's where things come in, where you understand how did Airbnb take the decisions, or how did one company do stuff differently. So you start to also, when you get people from other companies, or you get people from these leading companies, you also start to adapt to the culture, because that's what you're looking for, right? So as an organizational head, you want to actually steer the company towards something. So that's where all of these things come in. I think it's a good thing to have, and but I think it only happens at a seniorship level, and you need to actually understand what uh, if you already have talent that might be already doing this, because it's very difficult to you always see the shiny side of things, because the grass
Yeah.
is always greener on the other side, right? So if someone else is joining, then you would be more inculcated to know their knowledge instead of someone who has already been in the company for a while. So I think it's mostly psychological, and I think driving it as a junior is difficult as a company culture, but I think as a seniorship position, I think it's a lot easier to do. It also depends on the actual uh, dynamic of the company. You need to
Yeah.
also understand the dynamic of the company, because there might be cases where your company does not want to support data driven design, right?
Yeah, true.
Because
Right.
they just don't have the resources. For example, they don't care about data. They are like,
Yeah.
okay, we just want to make it look cooler. We just want to make it look next level. But we don't want to understand why. That can also be the case.
True. Yeah, maybe then just if that's frustrating, maybe just change the company. I mean,
I
I
mean,
don't know.
yeah. I mean,
It's
it depends. I mean, if
if it hurts you that
some
much, yeah.
designers might like it. Some designers might
Yeah, designers
like
might.
just the visual aspect of things, right?
Yeah. So I think Swapnil, we are ready for your paper.
Okay,
So
awesome.
if you can please share your screen with us.
Okay, awesome. I'm just going to do that. Can you guys see it?
Not yet.
Is it visible now?
No. Have you pressed the yeah, I
Yeah,
think now. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
there.
Okay, awesome. So essentially, this
Maybe
was
you
my
want to
paper.
zoom in a little bit.
Oh, you want me to zoom in? Okay.
Yeah.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, so this was more of a project or a thesis project where when I was studying in my master's of computer applications. So this was on the lines of actually leveraging data to make powerful design decisions. And this came up when I was actually with my friends, just doing a personal project on just testing some apps. So what we did was we actually were really curious to know and we were actually looking for some design patterns and stuff on those lines with Uber and Ola design. And what we actually realized is that we can actually gain some insight on these lines, right? So we actually did some user testing with these already built apps, because we were not doing this officially for Uber or Ola. This was the only self project where we wanted to actually just started up, like we wanted to do a big podcast with this, but things took a different turn. But then I actually started to do a research paper on these lines to undergo and complete my masters. So what exactly this entails is that, I mean, I'm not going to go into the exact details of the research paper, but I'll show you the process. So what we actually did was that uh, all of these startups and all of these companies right now, they I mean, in recent times, it has happened that people are more focused toward data. But apart from that, when people were actually designing back in 2017, this is a 2017 paper. So back then, it was mostly just visuals and getting to the best level of design system and adopting material design standards, adopting Apple human computer interface standards, human interface guidelines. Sorry, all of those things were more flashy and more useful. But and people used to just make their own design patterns because one person might like using 8 grid pixels, someone 8 pixel grid, and some person might like 4 pixel grid on those lines, and just the margins and all of those things, right? So all of these happen to be in the UI spectrum. But when you get into the larger things or scheme of things is where you understand if your task is being completed, right? So what we did was we took these two apps, which are similar applications, Uber and Ola, and they have a similar purpose. That is, you ask for a cab, and then the cab takes you to different locations, right?
Mhm.
So what we did was we took these apps and asked the user to perform a task. So essentially, it was book a cab from point A to point B, right? And in order to also understand different pain points, we had to specify certain limitations. So we also asked them to add two or more of their friends, that is in total 3 passengers, to that cab. And we also wanted to test the discount coupon of things, because we already, so this is where the data informed part comes in. We knew that there was something wrong with the discount coupon bit of Uber and Ola.
Yeah.
So we told them that you have a limited amount of money, which is not sufficient to travel from point A to point B. So you have to use a discount. And we knew there was something wrong with the discount page at time. So we wanted to explore that bit a little bit more. And so we gave them a coupon code so that they can put it in that box of coupon and find that coupon thing exactly. So I don't know if you guys know, but back in the day when Uber and Ola's interface was a little bit outdated, that time they had a very different coupon code system where it was very difficult to find the coupon code. It used to be in the left navigation drawer, and you didn't know where to find it. So to apply the coupon code first and then book a ride, which is in the bad interest of things, right? So anyway, what we did was so this is amazing tool called Screen Recorder. I mean, now I think they come pre-built in the phones, at least from Android. I think 10 and stuff, they come pre-built. But earlier, when it was 2017, I don't think they were built in. So
Yeah.
we downloaded something on the App Store, and we decided to record the people doing this. So we used a phone to actually understand and record these screens and test this book a cab and go from point A to point B through multiple users. So in total, we did up to 6 users, because we thought 6 is the good amount to go. And I think even by best practices, I think about 5 to 7 users, I think, are best to actually do a qualitative research to understand what is going wrong. And if enough of these these are good people, but you also need to understand if what are their personalities and their expertise of using the product. We'll just get to that in a second. So we actually did this meetup in Mumbai. There was this meetup group called Mumbai Artificial Intelligence. So it was a fractal analytics actually, and this was done in December 2016. So what we did was we actually categorized our users. So we understood from them, and we only took users based on the expertise level. So the expertise is mapped over here. So 6 users, and the expertise is the user one has used the app before, but they haven't used it extensively. Then there were people who never used Uber and Ola. I mean, yeah, that was the case in 2016, that people had never used a ride-hailing app. Then there were people who occasionally used the app, and there were people who regularly used the app. And we basically juggled between these 4 personalities and expertise of the users, and we tested it out with 6 users. Now, what I'll go through more is that how did we actually understand these tasks? So these were pre-decided tasks with challenges and constraints. And after all of these recordings are done, that is, you go through multiple recordings of these and understand what is going on. Then they actually we all come together with these video recordings that we all have in one place, and then audit these recordings to understand what behaviors are the users showing in these recordings. So then we did observations. So we have these videos stored actually in a file, and we actually. But I'm not going to show you all the videos because that's going to take a lot of time to consume, because it's been every interaction is about, I think, 10 to 15 minutes. So
Oh.
I'm just going to jump into the observations bit. And something that was very important is that when we were actually doing this test, we thought earlier that let's also record the user's face when they are doing this. So we can also understand the emotional, I mean, the behavior or emotional things, the expressions that they are actually conveying when they press a button or are confused to understand better. But we chose to go against it after testing it with one user. So what happened is, when we tested this face recording with one user, they were instantly caught off guard because they felt like, oh, I'm being recorded, so I shouldn't do this, right? So they saw their face and they immediately took aback, and they were concerned. So we didn't want to inculcate our behavior in them. We wanted to actually make them feel safe and make them feel like it was not being recorded, but it was only for a testing purpose. So we were telling them that their face won't be recorded after that, and we were telling them only your audio and your touch patterns will be recorded. So
Mm-hmm.
this was in person. Uh, so once we actually did that, and we specified the intent that we are recording your process and stuff like that, we also started asking them questions. But it's very important to understand that when you're conducting this test, you do not actually influence the user to a particular decision. For example, if you're, let's say, testing out, let's say, the pattern from point A, booking a ride, so you cannot tell them to click on something. You cannot tell the feature name, right? So that was one of the mistakes we did, one of the users. So we'll get to that at the end of this paper. But it's very important that when you're doing user interviews, user research, and user testing, is that you don't point the users out to specific
Yeah.
patterns, specific things that you want to do, because that might lead to a bias, right? And it might lead to incorrect data.
Right.
So these were the insights we obtained when we told the users to book a cab from point A to point B, and these were the insights we obtained. And the thing was, with Uber, I mean, these were not mapped by us earlier. These were only mapped recent. So what we did was we saw that the user clicks outside the modal box to dismiss it. So this was a recurring pattern. So Uber had a modal box back then, and
Hmm.
in-app, basically in-app, what is that? In-app promotion, right? So showing the new offers or something like that, and it had a cross button on the right. So
Hmm.
so people used to click on outside the box and not on the close. So
Right.
it was a pattern that we were seeing multiple times. So we decided to adopt. We saw that, and we understood that that is something we can track. Then we saw delays in page loading leading to multiple clicks and hence errors. So there were times when back in the day, Uber's interface used to take a little bit of time to load. So that's when a lot of loading issues used to cause problems with the page, right? So people used to do accident clicks and just rage out on the screen and essentially understand what is happening. So they were unable to understand what is happening, and they should just click, 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 and it used to just automatically register the click where the user did not even see the button. So that was happening. Then we also understood if user used location search, because the Uber tab on from and where you want to go is also something that was important. Then then we saw someone change location due to random moving of maps. So that time, I think you could change the map location by just moving your map. So the pointer used to just go to where you move the map. Then we also had couldn't apply coupon, which was interesting. This was a data informed thing where we wanted to test how good it is actually to how good is the coupon system actually to for Uber. And we also wanted to test what is Uber X, Go, Pool, Black, because all of these product names are popular in the USA, but when Uber launched in India, uh, these terms were not very user friendly. If you think of it, you don't know what is X, you don't know what is Pool, you don't know what is Black, right? So we and through these, what we did was we gathered insights after sitting together and going through uh, multiple videos of these users after the actual user testing. We all came together next week and saw all these videos, because I think it's important to not jump into it directly. You need to actually take a little bit of time off to understand and then go through it together. So we came together in a meeting room and we sat together and saw on a big screen all of these videos. So what we did was we started to map these qualitative data to a quantitative method, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. But we mapped these insights with our users. So all of these 6 users with different expertise types, we started to map them out. So the insights, as you could see earlier, where we mentioned it, clicks outside the modal box to dismiss it. Only one user did this. So we marked 1 for positive and 0 for negative. So this is just coding and mapping their behavior when they are actually going through the app to complete the task, right? And so 1 is for a positive, 0 is for a negative, that they did not do it. I mean, meaning that they did not, this did not occur with them. And a blank means that that instance never came in, because let's say that modal box never popped up, or that page loading never occurred because the user was in a quicker connection. Or my connection was quicker because we were using my phone for that. So as you can see, clicks on the modal box to dismiss it, only one user occurred. One user was able to do this. And out of other 5 were not did not face this challenge because it never popped up anyway. But if it did, it might have. Delay in page loading leading to multiple clicks, hence errors. So as you can see, 2 users faced this. One did not click outside; they clicked on the actual close button, and 3 of them did not even the page loading never occurred over there. It already loaded in cache. Use location search. One person used it, and second person did not use it. They straight up jump to location. I mean, they went from the map itself, and most of the people did not want to do it. I mean, they knew what their map actual thing is, so they did not have to search their location. They just have to put their own address. Change in location due to random moments in maps. So one of the users actually went through this, where the location randomly moved and the location was changed. So other people did not go through that. So the same user, if you see, also used location search. So when they actually went through this problem of the change in location, they moved back and did a location search to jump back into the correct location that they want. Couldn't apply coupon code. People who actually were experts in using the app were able to apply it, and people who were newcomers in the app, they or never used the app, they were not so able to apply it in the sense of these things. So if you see map it over here, never used the app or occasionally used the app. So it was a difficult learning curve for them. So user 5 and user 6, whose expertise is a little bit lower, they could not actually apply a coupon code and don't know what's Uber X, Go, and Pool and Black. We did not ask this question directly, but we wanted to understand what the user chooses, right? Because Go was the most popular option, and we had given them a limit of a budget, right? We had given them the budget which allows them to add a coupon code. So they had to choose a Pool or a Go, and Pool was not possible because we had more than 2 people, 3 passengers, as we stated earlier. So they had to choose Go, but we wanted to test the assumption if users know this. And if you see user 2 and user 6, so if I map it to the actual user thing, they never used the app, so they don't know what it is. So there was no proper in-app education to actually understand if these users are doing the right thing, right? So there was this case.
The same users then used Ola. So was it like you used the same user set and they used both Uber, and they like all 6 of them used Uber and then all 6 of them used Ola? Is it?
Yes.
Oh,
I mean, we didn't do it differently, because then it would create a bias in the data, right? Because you're using the same user set. So when I say user 1 to user 6, they are all the same users. They are not different users.
got it.
So then we moved on to Ola, right? So in Ola, if you see, now in Ola, there were a lot of things we found out, but there was a lot of things that we couldn't actually replicate with a lot of users. So these were all different cases. So for example, use location search, then change the default from Ola Prime. So Ola used to actually inculcate users to by selecting a default and using a dark pattern to already select Ola Prime those days. So your default selection was Ola Prime, not the cheapest option.
Right.
Then there were changes. So people used to actually just book from Ola Prime itself without going to the Ola, I think Mini. Yeah, Mini was the cheapest option, but Ola used to promote Ola Prime. Then there were changes of location due to random moving of maps. This was very usual. And then there was could not apply coupon code. Ola had a simpler coupon code application policy. So I think that not a policy but a UI, but that was I think interesting to understand. So and then we had app not opening fast, which was also a case with Ola back then. Sudden Ola app select pop-up irritated the user. Then could not find destination box because I don't know if you guys know, but Ola had hidden the destination box behind the actual source box. So it was very difficult to select your destination back then. I think they have improvised on it and now it's readily available. But yeah, this was a case which was there and could not find estimate. So when we went through this, we found out that one of the users did not do all of this. Like they ran into all of these things together, right?
Yeah.
So and only one of these users, but we could not replicate this, or they never went through this problem at all because they never went through it. So this can also happen where one of the users runs into all of the problems and you get all of the insights from them, but you cannot understand that the other users went through this because it never occurred with them, right?
Yeah.
So this can also be a case, which makes it very little data to support your evidence. So you cannot really come to a conclusion by just showing one user's data. If you have done a qualitative analysis, sure, it helps, but one user is still too little to do that, right? So then with these insights, okay, there were more. So with the same user, we had two more. And the last two ones couldn't find destination box and couldn't find estimate. So again, if you see through the entire chart over here, there was only one replication that couldn't find destination box, which was actually one of the data-informed decisions that we took. We actually added this on our own because we knew there was a problem with the UI over here, because we had faced it ourselves that the destination box was hidden. So we knew that this would be a problem. So we wanted to actually test this out, and also the estimate. We wanted to also test this out. So these two were actually our inputs and the actual insights. Hello?
So they were hypotheses and then you validated it.
Yes.
Got it.
So yeah, so that's where so that's the difference between data informed and data driven, as we spoke earlier. So we had these hypotheses and we wanted to test them out. And this one, if you see, 2 out of 6 users had a problem with this of the destination box. And if we map them to the users 2 and 5, let's see what 2 and 5 are. So 2 and 5 is never used app or occasionally used app. So people who are not familiar with the app might have trouble doing this. So again, it is more of a product education system where your product education might help increase that bit in the actual, might help increase that, increase the finding of that thing, or maybe Coach Mark can help you through it. Okay. So that was it. Then we have inferences.
Just curious, like at the end, did you actually what were you able to share it with the were you able to publish this paper as well?
As in, yeah, this is the publication link itself.
Oh, wow, nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is actually the published one. I don't know why it's not secure, but yeah. And I don't know why they don't have a title anymore. I don't know if the website is down, but yeah, it was published over here. So this is actually the International Journal of, I forgot the entire thing, International Journal of Engineering and Research Analysis or something on those lines. So this is a popular publication. Let me just open this website up and see.
No, that's okay. I mean, I just actually I was just want I said it because I was just curious that were you actually able to, because many a times there are a lot of people who do research and they wonder that if there is some way for them to actually share it with the world, or is it something that they just did on their own. So I just wanted to ask that were you actually able to share it with the world, like with
Yeah,
everybody?
so I also wrote a Medium post on this because I know
Mm,
a research paper can be difficult to consume.
yeah,
Plus, I think it's very difficult to publish a paper and then share it with your world because not a lot of designers read research papers, right? And especially at that time in 2017, Medium was a big thing. I mean, I don't know if it's still right now, but that time Medium was a big source of your actual good information that you got. So these user testing bits, I think I published it over there as well in a better format and to support my portfolio. But I also published this in as a college project in this research thing. It's just mentioned on the top that those guys helped me publish it. And I think any one of you wanted to publish a research paper, I think it's good to actually do that. But the thing is that it has a lot of criteria that you need to fulfill because there are a lot of formats. There's a lot of things you cannot plagiarize. You need to run it through a plagiarizing tool. All of these things come in and they become very important to understand and ensure that you don't go into all of those things, right?
right.
So I think if as a designer, if people want to share their insights and what they have learned, I think the best way to do it is write a blog. And I've been a big blog post. I love writing that way, but I've recently reduced on that. But earlier I used to write a lot, and I thought that was a great way to share my findings with designers across the globe. And I think Medium really helped with that. Nowadays, I think people don't have that much attention to consume big content. But
Mm,
what I now do is just write small posts on LinkedIn or small
yeah,
posts here and there. So posts help better with me right now than your actual big blog posts because if you think if you show a designer research paper, they might not be interested to read it because again the format and all of those things aren't something that designers are much largely used to, right?
got it.
So yeah.
So with this, like, what was like of course this is like an amazing paper, but what were y'all learning? Like, what were the things? I'm asking this question because sometimes you just do it once and then maybe something doesn't go right, and how do we make sure that we take learnings from them, from those experiences? So I just want to understand that what is it that you learned from the entire experience, and how is it that you've like your design process or your research process, did it change post this thesis? Did something change for you? How did you get more learnings from this?
So with learnings, I think there was something called inferences also in the paper, where
Mhm.
I mean, I'll go back to what I learned from it as a personal thing, but what we learned from this also were inferences. So these were basically things that we pointed out to showcase to the world that hey, if Uber and Ola did this, this could help, right? This could
Yeah.
help the user, and what are the insights happening. So this was a popular insight where when the user is lost in the app or they don't know where they are, they hit the back button.
Hmm.
So if the coupon code is in capitals, adapt the keyboard to be capital because you are entering a coupon code. Your keyboard should be block letters as well. Discounted cost. So these were the seven inferences that we got through these all of these recordings, and they might not be connected with this mapping over here, but we also saw things that happened where we could actually understand and show these inferences. But and then we mapped them to how many people on the app could actually which ones actually need both of them. So if
Right.
you see whenever Lost hit the back button, this inference was applicable for both because whenever users get lost anywhere in your app, they immediately try to go back to help them go to the right place, even for browsers for that matter.
It's
If you
just
get
control
stuck,
Z, right? We just want
sorry,
to. It's like command Z. It's a standard
yeah,
like
yeah,
pattern.
yeah.
We also try to go back and just undo what we've done.
So if you're a designer and you use like Figma or Sketch for that matter, and you do something wrong or like something goes wrong, you just try to do Command Z and get back to the original artboard or original state of things, right? So yeah, I think that is important. But also what so one of the learnings was, and this was a mistake over here, is when we were trying to do that and trying to get the users to perform a ride estimate. One of the mistakes that I made was I asked the user to click on something, right? So this was a mistake that actually pointed the user out, saying, "Hey, why don't you click on?" Or we just mentioned the feature. What are you looking for? So that actually caused a bias, and I think that led to a different uh, outcome than what we expected.
Right.
And that was it from my paper. I think I'll stop sharing and get back to your question on my actual learnings from these. Cool. So good to see my face again. Yeah, but from the standpoint of learnings, I think what happened is more on the lines of uh, we actually went through a lot of these users and understood what's happening. And I think not a lot. I don't think we get a lot of these people actually doing it much often. I don't think this happens regularly in the case of things where you get so involved in your work and you get so involved in the actual pixel perfection in the regular design things you do, as you tend to forget all of these important aspects if you are actually designing for the user or are you designing for the business,
Yeah.
where it is important to understand that business goals are necessary, but how do they actually impact the users that they go to yeah, your end user. So if it is for my case, and let's say I'm designing for CleverTap and I'm doing it for a marketing manager, then I cannot have the bias of, let's say, designing for a B2C application for that matter. Let's say when I was designing for Book My Show, my concern was more on the lines of how do I delight the user? How do I ensure the user is getting the regular delights that that will help make their process much more friendlier, and they try to stay on this app. But when it's in a B2B context, my major concern is the functionality. My major concern is that the user does not make a mistake, because it's so difficult. The cost is so much higher, because it's okay to lose. Let's say it's okay for a user to not get their product once in a while, because you can always send it back. But in a B2B structure, it's so much more. There's so much more cost, because a single mistake can cost your job, right? If you just send a campaign, like a simple campaign, to hundreds of users, you can lose so many users just because of that one campaign that maybe an intern or someone somewhere else sent, who did not have the access. So in a B2B context, it becomes a lot more difficult. And I want to also state on that fact that how difficult, or how different, I wouldn't say difficult, it's not difficult, but how different it is to actually test or regulate or get this data from a B2B standpoint than a B2C standpoint. Because B2C is largely where you can actually talk to your users, because
Right.
your users are actually using the app, and you can always go to multiple people. For example, if it's a big app like Flipkart or big app like Mintra, you can go to users, and you can always get users who have used the app, right?
Everybody is a user, practically.
Yeah, mostly everyone has the app installed, or they have at least used it once. But in a B2B context, it's very difficult, because these are apps they use at work. You wouldn't find someone on the road be like, "Hey, have you used our app?" That is impossible, right? I mean, it might be, but that will be coincidence. So in that sense is where your teams come in that sense, indirect research comes in. And when I say indirect research, it means that you are actually understanding from users, or understanding from your secondary users, that might be your customer success teams, that might be your sales team, on what the users actually want and what are they facing troubles with. So let's say if your user is facing troubles with a certain module of the product. For example, let's take an example of a B2B product which helps in collaboration, right? Let's take example of Envision Freehand. Now, Envision Freehand recently rolled out tools to help better collaboration between teams. Due to the COVID situation, people were moving to more collaboration tools like Miro and
Yeah, why?
Draw.io, whiteboarding. So Envision Freehand already did that, but they were mostly doing it for fun-based things. And I think the interface is still friendly that way, but now they have moved and steered towards a larger goal of having multiple purposes. So it can be brainstorming, it can be in the sense of your it is, I think there's brainstorming, there's whiteboarding, there are a Kanban board, there is collaboration, icebreakers. So I think they got these things from your users actually who and understood what they are doing with the original board.
Yeah.
So understanding how your users also behave and recording them. I mean, this can get into the privacy bit a little bit, but again, having tools like Hotjar and stuff and recording your users' process and understanding where they go through and how do they go through is important to actually steer the direction of the product.
Awesome. Great. So there are some questions. I think you're on based on your paper as well. There are many
Okay.
questions. I'll take them. So okay. So somebody has asked. Pallavi has asked this question. Good analysis, Swapnil. How can we perform the same analysis with less budget and obviously lesser time? I think you were also on budget, but yeah, let's take this question.
I don't think we had any budget in that sense because I think it was mainly based on the fact of I think it was mainly based on the fact that we were actually just doing some college project, and I don't think we had a budget in that sense. So I think it was a low budget. You can always do this with your app if you have an app. I don't know what Pallavi uses, what product she is actually using that in that sense. So I cannot really say that what would be her budget and how can she adapt to it. But you can always go out with a prototype version of your app. Let's say on InVision you have designed a prototype of your mobile application. You can go and ask users to perform the task, and I don't think you need a budget for it.
Right. I think Marvel also now even gives you an option. I don't know about InVision, but Marvel has that option where the screen is recorded now.
Oh,
So
they do?
you
I haven't used it for a while.
they record your face and they actually record your screen.
Oh,
So they ask
nice.
question and then you can do the entire thing. So Marvel has it,
Oh, nice.
and I think as long I think it's more about I don't want to like say that you don't have an intention, but sometimes if you get a little creative, it's a little about intention. And yeah, sometimes you have to incentivize users. So what I have seen from experience is that even a 200 bucks Amazon card sometimes works. Like people are just happy to get free stuff. So
Yeah.
Amazon
Oh,
card
yeah.
would work. You have to incentivize them. Please do.
I
But
mean, if you work for a company that you're testing an app for, like for example, Flipkart or Amazon, you can also give them the same app discount, or
Yes.
it also helps in your referrals because you get more users on board. But at the same time, you can also test the app out, right? Or test a new feature out.
So let's like budget part is okay, but I think time is something which I want to talk about because there's a lot of many a times we have this barrier. We think that it's going to take a lot of time. I think effort, yes, takes a lot of effort sometimes, yes. But how much time did you take, Swapnil, to do this? Like, was it a lot of time for you?
Just the recording, I think it took one day, and sitting together and uh, understanding the insights took another day. So I don't think it takes a lot of time, but I do think it requires a team to do it. I mean, a team as in at least 2 or 3 people and certain goals, because I don't think you can do this when you're working professionally in a company where I don't know if I mean I'm talking of this as a side project thing, and even if you're working in a company, let's say, and you want to test some things out and you don't have enough time, then you might want to take the weekend out and go to some meetups, go to some places where people gather. I mean, not now. I wouldn't say it's ideal to do it now, but
Correct.
when the world gets to the new normal or whenever, yeah, Zoom is also a good option. And Rohit is right, but I think the only thing is that when I think of things in the virtual sense, like right now, I think it's very difficult to understand the actual sense of users and actual user testing, because communicating on a video is so much difficult, right? Because it's you don't get the proper emotion because the user can switch their webcam off anytime. A
Yeah.
user can always mute themselves and get a laugh or be angry or something like that, and they're always distracted because you're at home and all of your family is there with you, so you don't get the proper intention as much as you would be on a one-to-one basis.
But
So
yeah,
that's
like
where,
yeah, but if that's not an option, then yes, please
yeah,
at
yeah, I
least
mean,
do
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
if that's an option, that is the only thing to do. And I think also tools like Full Story, Hotjar also help if you're using for web-based products. But apart from that, I think InVision and Marvel app are the best for testing your prototypes out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this one is by Swaraj. When you get large amount of data, how do you map the digital points to find out what and how to be implemented? When you get
Uh,
large, how do you map the digital points to find out how to be
I
implemented?
think what he means by it, I don't know
Yeah,
what. I mean, I think it's a little bit more specific, but
I think it's
uh,
about prioritizing. Like, how do you prioritize? Because there's so much data. Then how do you prioritize it?
I think it then comes down to the goals you're trying to achieve, right? If you have a lot of data, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know in the sense of the question. I don't know if he already has a goal in mind,
Right.
and so if he already has a goal in mind, then I think it becomes easier to prioritize what data you want to understand and perceive towards. But if there's no goal in mind, then uh, I'm I'm a little. I mean, then you might want to work towards a goal and understand which data points are actually very beneficial to you.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but I couldn't comprehend the question a little bit. I mean, I think it was too specific to his problem, but
I think it's also about, so, many a times in research, especially what we do is that we get the data and then we try to find, intelligence out of it. I think
yeah,
it's
yeah,
about finding your research questions first
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
then see how you gather it. It starts with a question, it starts with an objective or a hypothesis or your questions. And then you gather data thinking that, okay, to get this objective, like to get answer or to validate, invalidate this hypothesis, what are the kind of questions I should be asking in Google Analytics? How should I be, like, defining that journey, and then how should I be mapping it? So I think it's the other way, instead
I
of
think
getting data first and then finding patterns from it.
so. It's more of the problem you're trying to solve rather than jumping into the. It's more on what do you want to solve, right?
Yes,
So if you know what you want to solve, then the data will obviously guide you towards it. But if you don't know what you want to solve, you're gathering all the world's information, then you don't know what to do with it anyway.
exactly. So
I
it's
mean,
not
you can understand from that information on the problem you want to solve as well. I mean, it works both ways, I think. But the second way is largely data driven, not data informed.
right, right, exactly. Um, I think this question is an extension to what we just discussed. This is by Rohan. He says, Rohan Raj. He says
Okay,
how
not
to
that one.
pick right, yeah, how to pick right data to take decisions. What is the way to think about it? So how do you know that the data that you're collecting is, like, I think accurate? Is that what he meant? He means that you're picking the right kind of data.
Right kind of data. Okay.
It's more about relevant, I guess. Like, how do you know it's a relevant data? Maybe.
I mean, I don't know if he's talking about. I don't know if he's talking about quantitative analysis, or qualitative.
Let's
But okay.
like let's take overall, like, what should be the approach?
I think understand. So once you have a goal in mind, let's say you want to reduce the steps in a certain flow. For example, if your purchase flow is taking 10 steps and you want to reduce it to 5. Now your data, now picking up the data will be a lot easier once you have a goal in mind because now you know what to track. So let's say you want to reduce the steps, and so you create funnels, right? You create funnels between the pages. Like let's say you use a tool like CleverTap, Google Analytics, or something on those lines, and you create a funnel. Now you create these funnels and understand the cliffs you are having in the product. So let's say if a user has a cliff on, let's say, a page, a payment page or UPI page, where you have to open the UPI app and then make the transaction over there. So let's say they're having a problem over there. So in that sense, I think what happens is you know what to do, right? You know that having more cliffs and having more session length will actually hamper your data, hamper your process or your goal. So these are the data points you want to focus on. So to answer that question, I think the goal will, or the problem you're trying to solve, is what will drive you to select the right data. I
Right.
think
So
this was the same answer that we gave to the previous person, but I think it's a very interesting thing to go forward with.
right. Um. Okay. So this is by Tegbir. How data will help to convince the stakeholders and company professionals in a service-based organization where the project comes with a short timeline. Yeah. So it's like, deadline was yesterday. How do you actually, like, use
Deadline was yesterday.
Yeah, deadline was yesterday, and how do you use like the data to actually inform your decisions in those scenarios?
Uh, in a service-based company, I think they are more driven towards servicing the clients. So I don't know if data would come in. I mean, I don't know like the specifics of it, but I would say your best way to do it is just keep those data points in mind and support it. But I don't think you can do a lot over there because uh, the main the main objective of a service-based company is to deliver quicker to the client, right?
Right,
It's not about improving the product, or it's just basically following the guidelines that the client has given you.
right.
So if a
So
client tells you that you want to design, we want a 25 page, we want a project with 25 pages or 25 screens to be designed. So now you as a service company are not going to tell them, hey, it's better to design 15 pages instead because it will save you a lot of time. You can't do that, right? I mean, sure, you can suggest that, but I don't think that's a job of a designer. It's more in the lines of also what your stakeholders think in the service-based company. I think it becomes more harder in a service-based company, I would say. But yeah, I mean, give it your shot, man.
yeah, so I run an agency and it is a service based company. I understand what he's trying to say, and it's actually like that. Like hair is on fire, just deliver it. But I think it's again it comes down to one, like how have you branded yourself? Like when we started, of course, like we were just starting out, right? So we couldn't say that yes, we are very data driven. Like people were not interested at that time. The USP was that these are the people who just ship the products, or these are the people who make MVPs. But as you have like worked more and have as you have progressed, then maybe you are at a place of leverage where you can leverage your influence to say that, hey, why don't you do this? So it's a lot about education as well. And many times there are people in that the company that is hiring you, they have people who are responsible for data driven part of it. So if you can
Yeah,
get them in the process, maybe you just ask them that, if I have to ask this question, who could be the person that is there somebody who can help me with this data point because it will help me in this. So it's
okay, yeah,
like a peer based sort of thing. So one person from your company, from service, one is from their company. So it can be a lot more collaborative thing. But I know if you are starting out, it may be a little difficult. But
yeah. I
what
think
I
it.
think is that people usually appreciate, like nobody is like,
Yeah,
do your work, why are you asking this? If you have a good reason for asking, I have never ever ran into trouble for asking somebody that how are you
yeah.
going to collect data, or do I have this data with me? How do you know if this problem is worth solving? So I think, yeah, it depends.
Yes, I think it also matters on the rapport between these companies, right? Because
Right.
if you have a client that has been your client for a while now, then they will be more likely to actually support you with the data. Because otherwise, it's very difficult because the privacy concerns comes in.
Right.
So why would they share data with you, right? So if you
Right.
ask them, hey, how many users are coming to your app? They would be like, hey, dude, I don't want to know. I don't want to tell you because you're a service-based company. You are a outsider. You're not my company, right? So I think what you said is right that if you have someone who can actually guide you, that'll be great. But I don't know if that is the only person. So I think it helps if it is a product person because they would
Yeah.
know more on the things. But if it's a coordinator or a middleman, just making the communication happen or just managing the
The
project,
gate.
then I think it becomes a little difficult because they wouldn't know and they only care about getting the stuff from you.
But I would say it doesn't hurt to actually ask
Yeah,
with
it doesn't
like
hurt.
good intention and telling them why you asking it and how it will help. Because everybody, at the end of the day, everybody wants to make their product successful. So if you can again
Yeah,
link it to their success, I think they can be okay. Like it depends, but there's no harm in asking. If let's say out of 10, if only two people are giving you access, for the next time you go to a client, you can always say that, what we did helped these two companies grow, and that's how you like kind of build your portfolio. Also, your company's portfolio also gets built like that.
yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so Ashwini
And I
asked.
think, yeah, yeah, go ahead. I mean, because we lesser time. Yeah, sure.
So Ashwini has a question. He says, "What all KPI you use to measure the UX to get a clear insight?" So what is okay? So KPIs to measure the UX.
So KPIs is very subjective to actually the product itself. So let's say you are launching a product and when you're launching a product, I think an important KPI is adoption, because how many users are adopting it. But later on, I mean, I'm talking, let's say I talk in sense of a B2C or a B2B, right? If I'm talking in sense of a B2C, then and if I have a feature like let's say I'm a video app, I'm an app that like a Hotstar or a Netflix on those lines, then my KPI would be session length on how long is the average user session length across the app, or how long do the users watch a video for. The longer the session length, the longer the users are staying on my app. But whereas let's say in a B2B, if let's say I launch a feature, then product adoption becomes a thing, because how do I know a new product that I've launched in a B2B sense, even B2C for that matter, how do I know people are adopting towards it? Like let's say someone launched let's say Flipkart launched a product on fashion, right? Or Amazon launched a product on fashion. Then how many people actually on Amazon or Flipkart actually want fashion? I mean, why don't they just go to Myntra to it? So they would also be like, are people even adopting it? So
Right.
I know for a fact, I think Rohan can support me on this, but Zomato had launched something called Market, right? And they were mostly focused towards groceries, but they recently just let go of that product itself. I don't know why, but I think Rohan might have the insights towards that. But uh, but yeah, I mean, so all of these KPIs come in, and that's how the product and design understand what is happening and what are the goals to achieve that. So that's where you steer it clear and you go ahead and get these KPIs to also help you to support your decisions, saying that hey, this product got X amount of adoption after making these changes than it was before. So it also helps you to put your card down and say this is the right way to go. Whereas also, hey Rohan,
Hey.
hey, we were just talking about Zomato Market. Do you want to?
Add to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So, like, that decision has a lot to do with our long-term vision and mission. Where do we want to go, and where what problem we want to solve. And that's when we took a call. We're still thinking about it, and it's still live in like the cities, like you know, and but we have stopped like the growth as of now. Like we are not rolling it in new markets, but we are still thinking about if it fits in our long-term vision and mission or not. And if it doesn't, then we might
Yeah,
go with it.
got it.
Awesome. Very
Nice man.
sorry.
Thanks, Rohan. There is
Yeah.
one more question. This came from the meetup group. So Saurav is asking, would like to know Swapnil's view on behavioral and attitudinal KPIs.
Okay, so good thing that we are still on the topic of KPIs, because I think the last question was within that. So I think with terms of behavioral, I think it's something that we spoke about is how do you do tasks, right? So how do you go from task A to task B, and how do you go from task X? How do you complete a task? Like let's say a payment process, or how do you do a purchase process, or what is a task on adding to cart? So all of these tasks come into your behavioral KPIs, is
Right.
how does a customer behave towards that. And I think these are important when you're actually looking to improve the product, and it actually helps you to understand better from a product sense and a design sense to steer you towards that goal of improving that little bit of things to help the product get better year by year, right? I mean, it's a slow process, but it gets to that point where you want to optimize the user for creation or deletion of a task. So let's take an example. Let's say how easy is it to upload an Instagram reel, because that's the new thing now. So how easy is it to upload an Instagram reel, as opposed to how it was easy to upload a TikTok video. So that's where your task comes in, where the time taken to do that. So now, since people will be moving from TikTok to Instagram, it's very it's important for the user to understand if it's important for the product to understand if the user is actually getting the same experience, or is it a slower experience. And in that sense, it might be very difficult for the user to adopt to that new product, right? So I think, and now coming back to attitudinal. So attitudinal is more on the vanity metrics where the company is trying to understand what the users think of the product. And I think this happens in larger enterprises than startups where your NPS scores or all of those boxes that you see where how did you feel, would you like recommend the product to someone else, then you select on a score from 0 to 5. And the best, I mean, the simple hack I learned towards it is always select the default option as the best. And I mean, that is the way product goes by it. I mean, if you ask product managers, they would say select the default option by the best, because you see a lot of people might not even like that pop-up and they might just select the first option, right? The least effort option. So that might be a thing that they do. But as a designer, you also have to think of how do you get those scores. So I think from my perspective, I think those NPS things matter a little bit, but I think on a behavioral standpoint, it's much more data. And I mean, there's a lot more data and a lot more insight on a behavioral standpoint, because NPS only gives you the attitude of the product. So that happens to be what are the products. Is it a right product market fit? Then it also happens to be how are you branding the product? Is it the right brand that they're going with? Is it something in the lines of what strategies that they have to implement to make the design of product better? So I think that's where all of these things come in. But on the larger standpoint, I think both of these are important in the sense of understanding what decisions to make going further, based on
Yeah.
your goals. But
I
so honestly, I haven't worked with a lot of NPS and all of the attitudinal data. I worked more on the behavioral side of data. So I don't know if you guys have anything to share from the attitudinal standpoint.
I think attitudinal, as you said, like um it depends. We have actually done SUS, so that's like system usability studies. Like just when
Yeah.
somebody has a usability study or something, we just ask them that how was your experience. What we have also observed is that it's like it's very dependent on the mood they are having. If they're having a bad day, if they're having a good day. But that being said, there are times when actually a product is very easy to use. So I'll give you an example. Personally, for me, SBI is a like SBI online platform is a product which is super easy to use. Like literally, it gets the job done. But if you ask from a attitudinal perspective, it's not the most beautiful. It's not something that I would be like, hey, you should just make an SBI account for their online platform and or for their online experience. So sometimes it does happen that the product is not like very delightful in the sense that they would recommend it to somebody, or it's just a very usual thing. It just get the work done. But like I don't think users always typically think about whether or not they will recommend it to a friend or whether or not they will promote it to somebody. So
Yeah.
always take it with a pinch of salt, and we try to map it again with the behavioral. So we want to see that is it matching up. If there's a lot of huge gap between the NPS and your behavioral metric, we know that we might be doing something which is wrong, and then maybe there's this time to do some bit of qualitative research. But if we see that there's not like a lot of disparity between them, we are like, all right, maybe we are doing something which is okay, and that's fine. So NPS on all these things, I think I always take them with a pinch of salt. But behavioral are very task driven, and it makes sense to actually pay attention to those because they are giving you data right away. They're telling you that these things are not working, time on task, all these things, there's some problems there. So it makes sense.
Plus, I
uh,
think it also comes down. I think maybe, do we have time or should I continue
I think
on
we
the?
can have 5 minutes on this. Yeah.
So I think it also comes down to your loyalty, as you said, the SBI part. I
Yeah.
think it's more on the lines of you actually having to do it or being
Yes.
forced to do it through SBI. But if you had a better platform to do it, I think you would switch to that, right? I mean,
Yeah. That's
it's
true.
easier, but since you don't actually have the option, or you don't, I mean, let's say IRCTC for that matter. I don't want to book a Tatkal ticket from IRCTC ever. But if I have to travel somewhere, I have to go through that platform, right? So
Yeah.
I think it comes down to behavioral aspects of it. Is am I lazy or am I forced to do it through that platform or that product? Is where the monopoly comes in for a product or a product design standpoint. But if it's a way where I am not loyal, or I'm loyal to a product because I really like the design, that's where my NPS scores increase, because my product is really giving out the result and really giving me that emotion of actually being excited to use the product is where I will strive and be loyal to that product. So I think these KPIs also connect to that.
Yeah, ideally, like they should be on the same level. Like if
Yeah,
your product sucks, it should suck at both the level. It
yeah,
can't be like this. And if you are doing good somewhere, and if again your NPS score is really low, I think ideally it should be at the same level so that you know that okay, this would impact this. Because in ideal scenario, if your UX should actually be changing the loyalty or should be actually affecting their attitude about the product as well. So in the IRCTC example, for example, Make My Trip came up with this thing that they actually charge you just to book. Like you don't even book from their platform. They also redirect you to the IRCTC, but they have given you a convenience that in the initial part where you have to search for that train for which you want to book. So I have, for example, promoted it a lot. They have not asked me an NPS question, but I have promoted it a lot. I said that okay, they charge you $50, but it's worth the $50 because they are saving that pain for you. So for them, I would say that they solved both the problems for me. So yeah, it should be as balanced as
yeah.
it could be,
But there are
right?
times when your brand might not seem very like you might hate the brand, but you don't have a choice. But you like
Yeah.
the experience as well.
Yes.
So there are times when, let's say, Amazon for that matter, right? Amazon or Flipkart. Like I love the design of Flipkart. I love it, but I just don't use it to buy products.
True.
I use Amazon to buy products because I feel it's easier.
Yeah.
With the NPS score, I mean, if Flipkart asks me, do you like the product in the sense of like,
I do.
oh, I love the product, but I don't buy from it.
Yeah. Right. True. So, okay, so this is the last question. This is by Aman, who couldn't make it to the session. He's one of the co-organizers for this one. And his question is that, okay, this is an interesting one, and we'll close from there. So he says that we have bias towards our own data, right? So we have bias towards own understanding of product, and sometimes how do we ensure that we're not using data to prove our bias? Like how do you actually not use data to prove your bias and instead actually give an unbiased get an unbiased opinion about the product and then go from there?
I think this is a little bit. I mean, it is very situational because it depends on the goal you're trying to achieve. And let's say you want to prove to the like the biases come in when you actually want to prove something, right? Is let's say you want to prove a user is using the app for more longer than usual. That's where data fudging comes in. That's where you try to manipulate stuff. And I think this happens. I mean, this is not a good practice to do. I mean, I think it also comes down to the kind of person you are. If you want to do the right thing, or you actually want to just save your job. So
Right.
this is where it comes down to actually doing the right thing. Is when you would actually want to prove your bias wrong. So I read this amazing quote the other day. I don't know who it was from, but I think it's like good designers want to be proved right,
Hmm.
but great designers want to be proved wrong.
Yes. Right.
So it is where you have your bias, but you want to test that bias with your users and understand if your bias is correct, and that's where data informed design comes in, because you have that goal, or you have that intuition that hey, my users are not using this app feature, or they are using my app feature very less, or they're using it a lot more, like oh, my app feature is the best.
Yeah.
But you actually go and test it out with users and you understand, hey, I was wrong. And
Right.
that's where you grow as a designer, right? Where you want to take decisions, but your users are proving you wrong, so you have to reinitialize as a designer and
Right.
go into
Right.
the iteration phase.
Yeah. What you said about the product managers, they say that the default it's a dark pattern, right? Right. You choose
Yeah,
the
yeah,
10
yeah,
score, and by default everybody is clicking it. But I think a very important part in that example that we quoted was that it's the job of the leaders also. Like, how are you setting the precedence for everybody? Like, what are you doing? How is it
yeah,
that you're setting up the tempo or the culture of the company? But as a leader, if you're very committed to doing the right thing for your user, then I think it does percolate, and the people who do not fit in, they don't fit in. Sometimes they would be like, it's frustrating. Why are they asking me to do the right thing all the time? So it does
yeah,
happen. People won't stay for long in that environment. So yeah,
yeah,
I think that would help. With that note, I think questions are done. Thank you so much, Swapnil. I'll just
yeah,
pull in Rohan now. Thank you so much for your time.
sure,
And thank
yeah,
you, everybody. who was with us for the last 1.5 hours. I hope you
It was
learned
one and a
something.
half hour. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
I hope you
I
guys
talk a
learned
lot.
something new today. And thanks, Swapnil. Over to
Yeah.
you, Rohan. Is Rohan here?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
here. Just give me a minute. I'm still figuring out something.
Nice background, dude. You have a nice house.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So thank you everyone. Okay, got it. Figured out.
Look in the camera, dude.
I'm doing that. I'm removing you so that you cannot interrupt. Okay, so wow, what an amazing session. And like, there were so many questions we could not answer. Uh, but like, it's not about getting your questions answered. You can learn a lot from like, the questions other people ask. So that's why like, keeping it short, keeping it really short, like amazing session, Swapnil. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm the guy who enables all those stickers and cards and this one as well. So I'm just going to quickly remove it. Yeah, and that bugs you. I understand. Okay. So I want to thank like Swapnil for this amazing session. Also want to share with you guys some like events we are bringing in next couple of weeks, which is like I'm doing a portfolio building masterclass for free next week on Sunday next week. So that will be something that we are doing. And just to like sum it all, we'll be having a session with the like we'll be having a live portfolio review session on 26th of July, I think, and that will be like one of the sessions we will be doing with Sahil. And Sahil Pandita, you must have heard about him. He runs a very good YouTube channel, so we'll be doing a session with him where we'll be reviewing some portfolios that we think are like who will share their portfolio. And like he actually uh, was a designer at Rivigo earlier. He has worked with GoIPGo, and now he is currently at Gojek. Gojek. He leads a like good sort of product there, and like we have invited him to share his things with us. So keeping it really short, thank you so much for joining, and that was the session. If you haven't checked out like the other videos in this playlist, please do go check out those videos. Those videos are as amazing as this session was, and this is so amazing. And thank you so much. Like and the like all the things are here. And if you just want to talk, like you can reach out to us. If you want to learn something very specific, do make a request. We'll see if we can get someone who can share something on those lines. So thank you so much, Swapnil. Thank you so much, Agati ma'am. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'm Rohan, and I'm going to close this now. Thank you so much.